All right, so before we get started on our topic for today, I just wanted to go over the week 7 code word. And for that is going to be, again, another item that's about you guys. It is, what is your favorite school subject? Or even just any like subject that you would like to learn more about. So you can just message me your favorite school subject. This is just for people that don't join my meetings. But if you are actually in my meeting, you do not have to do this because I can get your credit for being in the meeting. But I still would like to learn about you guys. So if you would like to share that information with me, feel free to send me a message with that. But mainly this is for the people that do not attend and they want to get that weekly credit that they would have to send it to me. Okay? So let's get started on our notes. We're taking notes today on two-way tables. And what is a two-way table? Let's answer that question first. A two-way table, it is a table that displays two categories of data collected from the same source. And we've got some examples here. Our first one, number 1. It says the table below shows the results from a survey where students were asked if they play an instrument and if they play a sport. Find the sum of each row and column, then answer the questions that follow. Okay, so they told us to find the sum of each row and column, then answer those questions. So let's do that first. Let's find our sum. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at for all of our students that play an instrument here. I'm going to circle it, and we're going to find our sum. So I take that 9 and 14. We're going to add them together. 9 plus 14, and that total is going to go here in this section. 9 plus 14 is 23. So there's my first one. Now I'm going to go down for my students that do not play an instrument. What is my total for students that do not play an instrument? You can type it in the chat or you can turn your microphone on to answer that. What's my total? And I'm going to let you guys actually, you can use a calculator for this today because we'll have some percent and decimals that we're working with later on. I see 52, perfect. All you do is add 33 plus 19 equals 52, perfect. Okay, so we got that. Now let's look at our students that play a sport. All of our students here that play a sport, what I do, 9 plus 33, 9 plus 33 is 42. Perfect, I see someone typed in a 42, awesome, thank you. And then how many for the students that do not play a sport? What's our total here? 33. All we do is add 14 plus 19 is 33. Awesome. So we've got our table filled out almost. We just need to fill out this last one here. Okay, so you can do this 2 different ways, or you can even write it one way and then check your work. You can go with your total across here on the bottom. From side to side, just do the 42 plus 33 is 75. Okay, so if you get that, you should also be able to add these numbers together here. 23 plus 52 should also equal 75, and it does. Okay, so this is saying we talked to a total of 75 students. That is how many students were interviewed, or we surveyed a total of 75 students. That number is always going to be in the bottom right corner. And then everything else, we're going to kind of read it like very similar to like the multiplication charts that you've used and you've seen before in the past. I'll kind of show you how we'll use it like that later, and once we answer some of these questions. So our first question A, it says, how many students play an instrument? Okay, so we've got all of our sections here. Plays a sport, does not play a sport, plays an instrument, does not play an instrument. Our question, how many students play an instrument? So I need to look at this section, play an instrument. So I'm looking at this area only. And it doesn't ask us if they play an instrument and play a sport or do not play a sport. So we're just going to be looking at that total number. The total number of students that do play an instrument is 23. Okay, let's go on to our next one. B, how many students play an instrument and play a sport? Okay, so we're going to look at play an instrument. So I'm going to circle this so it kind of jumps out to me. And play a sport. Okay, so we're looking at play an instrument and play a sport. So this is where it's kind of like the multiplication chart where you would find your two sections that you're looking for. We're talking about play an instrument, play a sport. You're going to drag your fingers across until they meet in the middle, just like you would with like a multiplication chart. And you can see that 9 is where it's in line with plays an instrument and it's in line with plays a sport. So that's going to be our answer for our question there. How many students play an instrument and play a sport? The answer is 9. Okay, let's look at another one. C. How many students do not play a sport? We're only talking about one thing here. So do not or does not play a sport. You just look at your grand total of 33. Next question, D. How many students play a sport but do not play an instrument? So we're looking at play a sport and do not play an instrument. So does not play an instrument. So just like the multiplication chart, you would drag your fingers across. Where do we meet? What would be the answer for that question? How many students play a sport but do not play an instrument? What's my answer for that? Let's see, I see 33. Lots of you guys saying 33. Perfect. So if I just drag my finger down to, whoops, for play a sport, I would drag my finger down here. Drag my finger down and then drag my finger across, and you can see that it meets at that 33. So that's how I get my answer for that question here. Play a sport, does not play an instrument, 33. And last question, E, how many total students were surveyed? I kind of mentioned this at the very, very beginning. How many students total? Let's see if you remember what I said at the beginning. How many students total? Where do we find that number? Well, we can see we've got two different sections for total and total. It's either going to be 42, 33, 23, 52, 75. So I see you guys said 75, and that is correct. Our grand total is 75 students were surveyed. That number is always going to be in that bottom right corner where you follow from total to total. You would drag your fingers across, total and total, to get that final answer of 75 were interviewed completely. Okay, so that's kind of just the very basic on how you read those charts, those tables, the two-way tables. Let's do a little bit more practice, because sometimes you actually have to construct your two-way table, or you have to actually fill in those numbers. So let's do an example like that. Here it says our directions. Use the information to construct the two-way table, then answer the questions that follow. So we've got number 2. It says Sydney randomly surveyed students at her school and found that 72 students ride the school bus, and 37 of those students buy lunch from the cafeteria. There are 19 students that do not ride the bus, but buy lunch from the cafeteria. And then 9 students do not ride the bus or buy lunch from the cafeteria. Okay, so I underlined as I was reading the important piece of information, or you could circle it. So now I'm going to go back and fill that stuff in. Our first thing that we underlined was 72 students ride the school bus. So we've got rides the bus, does not ride the bus, buys lunch from the cafeteria, does not buy lunch, and then we've got our two totals. That 72 students ride the school bus. I'm going to be looking at this section. It doesn't say anything about lunch for that section of the sentence. So that's just going to be our total for how many ride the school bus, of 72. Okay. And then it says, and 37 of those students, so we're still focusing on this category, 37 of those students buy lunch from the cafeteria. Okay, so we're still talking about my ride the bus students. We're staying in this column. And it says 37 buy lunch. 37 of them buy lunch. So I need to make sure it's in line here and here. So here's my 37 because 37 buy lunch of that 72 that ride the bus total. Next one, there are 19 students that do not ride the bus, but they buy lunch from the cafeteria. So it does not ride the bus, but they buy lunch from the cafeteria. So I'm going to drag my fingers across until they meet, which here buys lunch, does not ride the bus. That's where I can put my 19. And let's keep on going. 9 students do not ride the bus or buy lunch from the cafeteria. So does not ride the bus, and what did it say? Or buy lunch. So does not buy lunch. So we got these two sections here. We're going to drag our fingers across until we can meet here and here. And that's where we can put that 9. Okay, so that is all the information that they gave us. And you can see that we still have some blanks, so we're going to have to fix this and clean it up a little bit. Okay, so sometimes when you get a table, you might have to construct it, or sometimes they give you a table and there's some pieces that are empty and you have to fill it out. Okay, so let's first look at our section here. You can start in a couple of different areas, but let's start here with our students that do not ride the bus. Okay, so we know 19 buy lunch from the cafeteria and 9 do not buy lunch from the cafeteria. How many students do we have total that do not ride the bus? How many students do I have total would be in that question mark. How could I figure that out? Well, just like we did from the very first one where we had to figure out our totals, all we do is add your numbers here, 19 plus 9, and then we get our 28. Perfect. Good job. I see those answers in there. Okay, so we've got that total. There's a couple of different ways we can go on to this. Let's do this one next. Our buys lunch from the cafeteria. Okay, so we know we've got 37 and we've got a 19. What's our total? Add those two numbers together, 37 plus 19, and then we get 56. Awesome. Okay, let's see if there's any others that are fairly easy. Let's do our grand total down here. Let's look in from left to right. Our grand total, how many students did we talk to, or how many students were surveyed total? You take this plus this, 72 plus 28, and then we get 100. Awesome. Okay. So now we've got to fill in here and here. So let's talk about our rides the bus. So we know normally we would do 37 plus this, and that would equal 72. But we're missing that. So you can actually go backwards. The opposite of adding is subtraction. So you would take your total, 72, minus 37. So then 72 minus 37, that's going to equal here. Sorry. Our empty blank, and then we get 35. You can even double check and then make sure that you did it correct. It should be 37 plus 35. I'm sorry. 37 plus 35, and then you get your 72. Okay, so let's do it for our last little section here. Same exact thing. Normally you would do 56 plus this would equal 100, but we're missing that, so let's go backwards and do subtraction. 100 minus 56 equals, and I see you guys typed in 44. Awesome. Double check. You should be able to do 56 plus 44 equals 100. Okay, so we got it all figured out, or all filled out. Let's answer those questions. Our first one, A. How many students buy their lunch? You can go ahead and type that in, or you can turn your microphone on. But we're going to be looking at buy their lunch. What's my answer here? How many students total buy their lunch? Would it be 37, 19, or 56? If we're only talking about one section, we're going to look at our total category, And that's where you drag your fingers across to find our final answer of 56. Awesome. Let's go on to the next question. B, how many students ride the bus but do not buy their lunch? So ride the bus, which is here, and do not buy their lunch. So does not buy lunch from the cafeteria. Drag your fingers across, meet in the middle. What's my answer? And we get 35. So we drag it here, get our answer of 35. Good. Next question. C, how many students do not ride the bus? We're only talking about one section, so does not ride the bus. So then we're just going to look at our grand total all the way down. Our grand total of 28. Whoops. And then our next one, D. You already saw that. How many students do not buy their lunch? Do not buy their lunch. So it does not buy lunch. We're just looking at our total since we're only talking about one category. So we look all the way across. 44, that's our answer. And then our last question here, it says, how many total students were surveyed? What's my answer? How many total students were surveyed? Where do we find that answer? Bottom right corner, total. Lots of you guys saying 100. Awesome. That's the correct answer. 100. Awesome. Okay. So far, I know we've only done like two examples on this. How do you guys feel about this? Give me like a 1 through 5. 1 is like, what's a two-way table? And 5 is like, I feel like I could teach this. This is really easy. So go ahead and type that in, or you can turn your microphone on. Awesome. So you guys are feeling so far pretty good about this. Usually you guys are like at the 3s. I see more of the 4s and 5s. Awesome. So let's keep on, or actually, let's just talk about this one here because we have more than 2 sections in this area here. So let me just help you guys with filling out the table. We're not going to answer the question because I'm sure you guys are fine with that. Okay, so we've got our information up here. It says Adam surveyed 120 random students in his middle school and asked them if they plan to attend the school musical. Of the 80 students who responded that they are attending the musical, 15 are 7th graders. So they already told us that. 15 are 7th graders. Of the 46 grade students that are surveyed, 13 said they do not plan on going. Only 10 8th graders surveyed do not plan on attending the musical. And they already filled out that information. So technically, you wouldn't even need to read that. You could just look at your table and you can still get that same information. But we need to fill out the rest of the pieces that we're missing here. Okay, so let's first look at our 6th grade section. Our 6th grade section. And we know that if our total is 40, that means we could take this plus this equals 40. But we're missing here, so we can go backwards and do subtraction. We could do 40 minus 13, and then we would get our answer here. And we would get, yes, I see, 27. Perfect. Okay, so you can go backwards and do subtraction. You can double check with adding. 27 plus 13, yes, it equals 40. Okay, let's look at another section here. Let's look at our section for going to the musical. If we know our total is 80, what we would do is you would normally do 27 plus 15 plus this equals 80. But we don't know what that is, so we can actually go backwards and do subtraction. Let's do some subtraction. And let's do our total of 80 minus, start at the top, 27 minus 15, and then that's going to give you your answer here. So you do 80 minus 27 minus 15 to get your answer there, which is 38. Okay, and then you can even go back and double check. You would add them together. 27 plus 15 plus 38 would equal 80. Okay, so now let's do our next section here. Our not going to the musical. Okay, so this is the one that we're missing here. We know that normally we would add this plus this plus this should equal 40, but we're missing that one in the middle there. So let's go back and do subtraction. 40 minus, you need to subtract this one and this one. So you can go in any order. You could do 40 minus 10 and then minus 13. Or you could do 40 minus 13, then minus 10. And then go ahead and tell me, what do you get? What would be our missing number? You can type it in the chat or you can turn your microphone on. But what would be that missing number? It's the 17. Awesome. So if you were to plug that into your calculator, 40 minus 10 minus 13, you get 17. You can even double check. Let's pretend like we're adding. If you did 13 plus 17 plus 10, that would equal 40. If you did not get 40 or if you did not get that total number, then you made a mistake. You have to go back and check it. But we did it together, so I know we're good. And then let's talk about our totals across. You just add those together, 15 plus 17 to get your answer of 32. And then here, 38 plus 10 equals 48. Okay, and then double check, make sure you did it correct. These ones were already filled in, so I know those are correct. The 80 plus 40 equals 120. But this is where we filled in our information here. So go back and double check, plug it into your calculator. You should do 40 plus 32 plus 48, and that should equal 120. If it does not equal 120, then you made a mistake somewhere here in the information that we plugged in. But we did it together, so I know we're good. And then from there, you would just go back and answer your questions, just like we've done before. It says, how many 8th graders plan to attend the musical? That's your total. I think these are all just individual. How many 7th graders were surveyed? How many 6th graders plan to attend? So yeah, those are all just individual questions. They're not grouped together. But if it were grouped together, like not going to the musical and 8th graders, you would just drag your fingers across, just like before, and then you would get 10 or something, or whatever question you would answer. But you would still just drag your fingers across just like normal. Okay, let's look at our last little section here, relative frequency. And what is that? It is the values in each category divided by total number of values. Okay, so we've got our example here, number 4. It says, find the relative frequencies using the data in question number 3. Round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. Okay, so we're going to be using the information from question 3 up here to help us out with this question. So your brain might automatically go to like, okay, just copy down the same numbers, 27, 15, 38, copy down those numbers. Well, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to actually do a little bit more math. So this is where your calculator is going to be coming in handy here. But what we're really going to be doing is we're going to take all of our numbers. Give me a different color. We're going to take all of these numbers. We're going to take the 27. Whoops. You take all of your numbers and then you're going to divide by the number in the bottom right corner. So you would plug into your calculator to figure out what goes here. You would do 27 divided by 120. And then we're going to round to 2 decimal spots. So if you were to plug into your calculator 27 divided by 120, after rounding it to the nearest decimal point, nearest hundredth, because it says the nearest hundredth, so that's 2 decimal spots, you would end up with 0.23. So I'm going to erase that, 0.23. Okay, let's take our next one, 15. So we're going down. So then I would do 15 divided by the number in the bottom right, 120. 15 divided by 120, round to 2 decimal spots. And then you end up with 0.13. And then you just keep on going following that same pattern. You always divide by the number in the bottom right corner. So for my next one, 38 divided by 120, you get 0.32. And my last one here, 80 divided by 120 is 0. Whoops, my pen. We get 0.68. And then keep on going. 13 divided by 120, 0.11. 17 divided by 120, 0.14. 10 divided by 120, 0.08. 40 divided by 120, 0.33. Our last column, 40 divided by 120, 0.34. And then we've got 32 divided by 120, 0.27. 48 divided by 120, 0.40. And then our last one here, again, still divide by that number, 120 divided by 120, and you get 1. Okay, so since we're rounding, it's not going to be perfect. If you were to actually still go across and add these together, this plus this, you may or may not get exactly that 1, but we're rounding, so it's not always going to be exact. It's just super close to our actual answer there. Okay, and that's just how rounding works. Sometimes it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. And then answering your questions, it's fairly similar to what we were doing before. A, what percent of the students surveyed were 8th graders? So we're going to be looking at the 8th graders. We're only talking about one category. And then we're going to be dragging all the way across. We're looking at our total of just the 8th graders. And you can see it says 0.40, but we're talking about percent. So 0.40. And then what you do is you scoot your decimal over 2 times to the right. 1, 2. And then you get your answer of 40%. I see a question in the chat there. How do you get the 0.23? I think, is this the only one that's 0.23 here? Let me see. I'll double check. It might have been incorrect. But you would plug into your calculator 27 divided by 120. 27 divided by 120. I'll even double check really quickly. Sometimes we make mistakes. We're human. 27 divided by 120. 0.225. Where is it? Here. Okay. So you would get, when you plug it into your calculator, 0.225. Okay, but we're rounding to just 2 decimal spots. So I wanted to stop at that second number after the decimal point. Okay, so that's how I get the 0.23. So that means it needs to end here. So I look at this number, the 5, the one that I circled over here on the right. If the number here is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then I look at this number and I bring it up. So I would go to 0.23. If this number here in the circle were 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, then I would just keep this number, the 2, I would just keep it the same. Does that answer your question? So I see a question on, or a statement, this is confusing. What exactly, if you could give me a certain part that's confusing, is it the percentage part or reading the table? And you're welcome, Cynthia. I'm just waiting on a response to see what part is confusing. I want to make sure I can help you guys out in understanding this. So the percentage part is confusing. Okay, so let me continue working on some of these questions for this last example, and then maybe you understand it by then, and then if not, then I can work with you a little bit more. But let's keep on going here. Next question, B. Our next question B, it says, what percent of the 6th graders plan to attend the musical? Okay, so we're going to be looking at, it says 6th graders, so we're looking at 6th graders and plan to attend the musical. So that means they are going to the musical. So you can see in our table, we already have that 0.23, but we're talking about percent. So I don't want to put a decimal. So I know I can see that it's 0.23, 0.23. And to turn that into a percent, all we do is scoot the decimal over 2 times to the right. 1, 2. So then I would get 23%. 23%. And then our last question, C, what percent of the 7th graders do not plan to attend the musical? So we're looking at 7th grade and not going. So drag your finger across. So we get a 0.14. 0.14. Scoot your decimal over to the right 2 times. 1, 2. So now it's 14%. Okay. So hopefully that helps you guys with understanding. Going from our decimals to the percentage, all you do is scoot it over 2 times to the right. But to go from our whole numbers to the decimals here, you just take all of your numbers, 13 divided by that total number 120, or 80 divided by the total number 120. That is how you do that. So let me go on to the assignment here. I know there's one more question there on our notes, but you can go back and practice that on your own. But let's look at our assignment here. There's just this one page, and I know it says it's a 2-page document, so just ignore that. I know it's a little confusing. It's only 1 page. There's 4 questions. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let me kind of help you guys out with this since you're asking, go over one of the questions from the assignment. So this is your assignment. You're going to be doing all 4 questions. They're both very similar questions to each other. It's just different numbers, different topics. Okay, so we've got our first one, number 1. It says, a group of students who took the same math test were surveyed and asked if they studied for at least 1 hour and if they passed the test. Complete the tables and answer the questions that follow. Okay, let's go ahead and finish our table here. So they gave us some of our information. Let's go ahead and finish the rest of it here. So let's look at our first section for the kids that passed, the students that passed. We know we have a total of 64. So how many can I put here for the question mark? If we've got our unknown and we've got a 50 here, 50 of them did study for more than 1 hour, and we have a total of 64. So how many students studied for less than 1 hour and passed? What would I put in that question mark there? See if you can remember from the notes. How could I figure that out? Normally we would do this plus this equals 64, but you can go backwards and do subtraction. So how would I figure out that there? What would be my question mark? We can subtract, perfect. So just subtract our total 64 minus the information that we do have, minus 50. And then what do we get? What's our answer? How many studied for less than an hour and passed? 14, perfect. Let's put a 14 here. Awesome, so you just did 64 minus 50 equals 14. You can even go back and double check. 14 plus 50 equals 64. Awesome, that's good. Let's fill out the rest of this table. Let's look at this one here across. So I know this is where you guys kind of struggle with our subtraction. So again, we're missing a number here. We have our total of 75. Normally we would do this plus this equals 75, but we don't know what that first thing is. So let's do subtraction. Let's go backwards. 75 minus 52 equals what?
23.
I heard a 23 and I see someone also typed in a 23. Perfect. Thank you. So there we get 23. You can double check. 23 plus 52 equals 75. And then also you can see that this column is all filled out too. 14 plus 9 should equal 23. So there's different ways you can go about filling out this table. Whatever way is easiest and whatever way jumps out to you, that's fine. Let's fill out this section here. Let's go up and down. This is our unknown. Our total is 52. So what's my question mark? What would I put there for the question mark? If we have our total, but we're missing something else, then you need to do subtraction. I see you guys typed in 2. Perfect. That is correct because you would do 52 minus 50 equals your unknown, which is 2. And then you can go back and do addition to check your work. 50 plus 2 equals 52. And here you could go backwards and do subtraction. But let's make it a little bit easier. Let's do some addition. What's our total here? You just go across. 9 plus 2 equals, and I see you guys typed in 11. Perfect. Okay, and then double check. Make sure that these two, 64 plus 11 equals 75, which it does. Okay, and then you should be able to answer your questions for that section. I'm not going to go over that. I feel like that's probably the easier part of this topic. But let's fill out the decimal information here. For number 2, you're still going to have to go back and answer ABC. I'm not doing that for you. But for number 2, it says complete the relative frequency table using the data from question 1. Round to the nearest hundredth if necessary, then answer the questions that follow. So you're going to take all of these numbers here and divide by 75. So for my first one, let's take 14 divided by 75. So here's 14 divided by 75. And then my next one, I would go down 9 divided by 75. And then keep on going. 23 divided by 75. And then here, 50 divided by 75. 2 divided by 75. And then keep on going. 52 divided by 75. 64 divided by 75, 11 divided by 75, and then last one, 75 divided by 75. Okay, you want to stop at that second decimal spot. And you don't want to leave it as 14 divided by 75. Actually plug that into your calculator, round it to the nearest hundredth, and then that's how you would get your decimal spots for that chart. Do you guys feel like you'll be okay to work on this assignment on your own or with a partner? If you feel good about it, then you can go ahead and exit the meeting. Just make sure you've said something in the chat before you leave. You're doing all of those questions on this page. Submit a picture on Schoology when you're finished. And then we'll meet again tomorrow at 9 a.m. And that is it. So if you're leaving, bye guys. Have a good day. If not, I will still be here for some questions if you guys have more questions on this. But I'm going to go ahead and end my recording now.